She adopted a child, but she was too much like her. Later, she discovered the reason why. 10 years. That's how long grief can stretch when it has nowhere else to go. Amelia Blake measured time differently now, not in birthdays or holidays, but in the space between heartbeats. The quiet moments when memory crept in like smoke through a keyhole. She'd learned to fill those spaces with words. Stories for children. Magic kingdoms where lost things were always found, where families stayed whole, where cars never skidded on rain-slicked highways in the dead of night. Her house on Maple Street was beautiful in the way that museums are beautiful. Everything in its place, nothing out of line. The nursery upstairs remained exactly as it was the day before the accident. Pink walls. A mobile of dancing elephants that never moved anymore. A crib that had been waiting 10 years for a child who would never outgrow it. Sometimes, when the silence got too heavy, Amelia would stand in that doorway and whisper bedtime stories to the empty room. Just practicing, she told herself. Just keeping her voice ready for the children who would hear her stories at libraries and schools. But in her heart, she knew better. This particular Tuesday started like all the others. Coffee too strong, toast barely touched. Another day of pretending the hole in her chest wasn't there. But today was different. Today, she was driving to Willowbrook Children's Home, 30 miles outside the city, where she'd volunteered to read to the kids. The orphanage sat at the end of a winding road, surrounded by oak trees that had seen more seasons than most of the children inside would ever remember in one place. It was the kind of building that tried too hard to look cheerful, bright yellow paint that couldn't quite hide the institutional sadness underneath. Mrs. Blake, the director, Mrs. Patterson, hurried toward her with that particular smile adults wore when they were about to ask for more than they'd bargained for. "We have such a treat today. The children are so excited." Amelia nodded, clutching her bag of books tighter. She'd learned to steel herself for these visits. Children had a way of looking right through you, seeing things you thought you'd hidden. The reading room was filled with cross-legged kids, ages 5 to 15, all pretending they weren't desperate for someone to notice them. Amelia had done this enough times to know the signs. The ones who sat too straight, trying to be perfect, and the ones who slouched in the back, armor up, hearts closed. But there was one girl who didn't fit either category. She sat alone near the window, maybe 11 years old, with dark hair that caught the afternoon light and eyes that seemed to hold secrets. She wasn't trying to impress anyone or hide from anyone. She was just there, present in a way that made the room feel different. "That's Ivy," Mrs. Patterson whispered, following Amelia's gaze. "She's been with us for about 6 months now. Sweet girl, but, well, she keeps to herself." Amelia nodded, but she couldn't look away. There was something about the way Ivy held her shoulders, something about the tilt of her head that made Amelia's chest tighten with recognition she couldn't name. "All right, everyone," Amelia said, settling into the worn armchair at the front of the room. "Who wants to hear about a dragon who was afraid of her own fire?" Hands shot up everywhere, except from Ivy, who simply watched with those knowing eyes. As Amelia read, she found herself glancing toward the window seat again and again. Ivy listened without moving, barely blinking, as if she were memorizing every word. And when Amelia changed voices for different characters, making the dragon sound scared and small, then brave and fierce, she caught something impossible. Ivy was mouthing the words along with her. Not the story. Amelia had written this one herself, never published it. But the rhythm, the cadence, as if she knew how Amelia's sentences would end before they were spoken. When the reading was over and the other children scattered to their activities, Ivy remained in her spot by the window. Amelia found herself walking over, drawn by something she couldn't explain. "Did you like the story?" she asked, settling into a chair across from the girl. Ivy looked up, and for a moment, Amelia forgot how to breathe. The child's eyes weren't just dark. They were fox-colored, amber-brown with flecks of gold. The same color Amelia saw in her own mirror every morning. "It was good," Ivy said, her voice careful but not cold. "The dragon reminded me of someone." "Oh, someone you know?" Ivy tilted her head. That same tilt Amelia had seen in her own childhood photos, and something flickered across her face. "Maybe someone I used to know. I dream about a lady sometimes. She has eyes like yours." The words hit Amelia like ice water. She managed to keep her expression neutral, but her hands began to shake. That's interesting." Mrs. Blake, Mrs. Patterson appeared beside them. Would you mind if I stole you for a moment? There's some paperwork for your volunteer hours. As they walked toward the office, Mrs. Patterson shook her head with a bemused smile. It's the strangest thing. I've never seen Ivy take to someone so quickly. Usually she barely speaks to new people. She seems like a special girl. Oh, she is. Bright as anything. Creative, too. Always writing little stories, organizing things just so. Reminds me of someone, actually. Mrs. Patterson paused, studying Amelia's face. Funny thing is, she reminds me of you. The way she holds herself, some of her expressions, even some of her little habits. Amelia's pen stopped moving across the form she was signing. What kind of habits? Well, she lines up her crayons by color when she draws, light to dark. And when she's thinking hard, she does this thing, Mrs. Patterson demonstrated, sucking her bottom lip slightly. Just like you're doing right now, actually. Amelia's hand flew to her mouth. She hadn't even realized. And when she gets nervous or upset, she crosses her arms like this. Mrs. Patterson folded her arms high across her chest, hands tucked under her armpits. It's the most distinctive thing. I've never seen another child do it quite that way. The room began to spin slightly. Amelia gripped the edge of the desk, fighting to keep her voice steady. That is quite a coincidence, isn't it? Everyone here jokes about it. She's just like you, Mrs. Blake, they say. Almost like she could be your own daughter. The words hung in the air like a held breath. That night, Amelia sat in her car in the orphanage parking lot for 20 minutes after the visit ended, hands gripping the steering wheel. Through the window, she could see Ivy in what must be the dining room, sitting alone at a table, drawing with careful concentration. Every few minutes, the girl would pause, look up, and scan the parking lot as if she were looking for something or someone. When their eyes met through the glass, Ivy raised her hand in a small wave. Not the eager wave of a child trying to get attention, but something softer, like recognition. Amelia waved back, and in that moment, something shifted inside her chest. Not healing, not yet, but the first crack in a wall she'd built around her heart 10 years ago. She drove home with Ivy's face burned into her mind, those amber eyes asking questions Amelia wasn't ready to answer. But for the first time in a decade, she found herself imagining sounds in her too-quiet house. The rustle of small feet on stairs, the whisper of pages turning, a voice calling Mom from another room. That night, she stood in the nursery doorway longer than usual, and for the first time, she let herself whisper a different kind of story. Not about dragons or kingdoms, but about possibilities. About second chances. About fate working in ways too strange and wonderful to understand. What if, she whispered to the dancing elephants, what if some love is stronger than logic? 3 months. That's how long it took for the paperwork, the home visits, the questions that pried into every corner of Amelia's life. 3 months of holding her breath, terrified that someone would change their mind, that this impossible gift would be snatched away before she could fully believe in it. But here they were, Ivy and Amelia, standing in the hallway of the house on Maple Street, surrounded by 3 cardboard boxes and a lifetime of careful distance between them. "This is your room," Amelia said, pushing open the door to what had been her office. She'd spent weeks transforming it, soft blue walls, a desk by the window, shelves waiting for books and treasures. Not pink, not a nursery, something new. Ivy stepped inside, moving with that careful grace Amelia had noticed from the beginning. She touched the desk, traced her finger along the windowsill, stood in the center of the room as if she were memorizing the angles. "It's nice," she said finally. Not excited, not disappointed. Just present. Living with Ivy was like learning a new language. She was polite but guarded, helpful but watchful. She said please and thank you for everything, as if good manners were armor. At meals, she ate whatever was put in front of her without complaint, but Amelia noticed how she always left a little on her plate, a habit born from places where food was scarce and you saved what you could. The first tantrum came on a Thursday. Amelia had suggested they go shopping for clothes, and Ivy had nodded agreeably enough. But in the store, when the salesperson fussed over her, calling her sweetie and honey, something in Ivy's face shuddered closed. "I can pick my own clothes," she said, her voice tight. "Of course you can, sweetheart," the woman continued, not hearing the warning. "But wouldn't this pretty pink dress be perfect for?" "I said I can pick my own clothes." The words came out like a snarl, and Ivy's arms folded across her chest in that distinctive way. High, protective, final. The ride home was silent except for the sound of Ivy's breathing, still sharp with anger. When they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. "I'm sorry," I yelled. "You don't need to apologize for having feelings," Amelia said carefully. "But do you want to talk about what upset you?" Ivy stared out the passenger window. "People think they know what you need, what you want. They don't ask, they just decide for you." The words hit Amelia like recognition. How many times had she said something similar to well-meaning friends who tried to fix her grief? "I understand that," she said. "It makes you feel invisible." Ivy's head turned, those amber eyes studying Amelia's face. "Yeah, it does." That night, Amelia heard crying through the thin walls. Soft, muffled sobs that sounded like they'd been practiced to stay quiet. She stood outside Ivy's door for 10 minutes, hand raised to knock, before finally walking away. Some walls had to come down from the inside. But slowly, carefully, they began to find their rhythm. Ivy loved to read, curled in the window seat with her legs tucked under her, lost in other worlds. She organized her bookshelf by size first, then by color within each size group, a system so particular it made Amelia laugh with recognition. "That's exactly how I organized my books when I was your age," she said one evening, watching Ivy rearrange a shelf for the third time. "Really?" Ivy looked pleased. "Most people think it's weird." "Not weird. Logical. Beautiful things should have beautiful order." The first time Ivy smiled, really smiled, not the polite version she wore like a mask, Amelia had to excuse herself to the kitchen to cry. They developed routines. Saturday morning pancakes, where Ivy insisted on making perfectly round circles while Amelia made deliberately wonky shapes that looked like animals. Sunday afternoon walks through the neighborhood, where Ivy would collect interesting leaves and Amelia would make up stories about where they came from. But it was the small things that made Amelia's heart race with impossible recognition. The way Ivy hummed while she drew, not songs, just wordless melodies that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. The way she saved the best bite of everything for last, savoring it with closed eyes. How she talked to plants, whispering encouragement to the struggling geranium on the kitchen windowsill. "You have to want to grow," Ivy told the drooping flower one morning, her voice serious. "Nobody can make you, but if you want to, I'll help." Amelia paused in making coffee, struck by the familiarity of the words. She'd said something similar to every houseplant she'd ever owned, including the geranium that had been dying slowly for months before Ivy arrived. Now it was sprouting new leaves. "Where did you learn that?" she asked. Ivy shrugged. "I don't know. I just know things sometimes." The coincidences began to pile up like autumn leaves, too many to ignore, impossible to explain. Ivy organized her art supplies the same way Amelia had as a child. Crayons by color, pencils by hardness, brushes by size. When she concentrated, she got a small line between her eyebrows in the exact same spot where Amelia's appeared. She saved bottle caps, just in case they're useful later, and had strong opinions about the right way to fold towels. But it was the night of the thunderstorm that changed everything. The power had gone out around 9, leaving them in darkness except for the candles Amelia had scattered through the house. They'd been playing card games by flickering light, and for the first time since Ivy arrived, she seemed completely relaxed. "Tell me about when you were little," Ivy said suddenly, her voice soft in the golden light. Amelia's throat tightened. She'd been dreading this conversation. How do you explain the before when the after was sitting right in front of you? "I was lucky," she said carefully. "I had parents who loved me. A husband who made me laugh every day. We had a baby daughter." She stopped, the words catching like thorns. What happened to her? The question was inevitable, but it still felt like a physical blow. "There was an accident. A car crash. We lost her." Ivy was quiet for a long moment, studying Amelia's face in the candlelight. How old was she? Just a baby. Not even 2 years old. What was her name? Amelia closed her eyes. She hadn't said it out loud in years. Ivy. Her name was Ivy. The silence stretched between them, heavy and electric like the storm outside. When Amelia opened her eyes, the girl was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. That's my name," Ivy whispered. "I know. It's part of why I felt so drawn to you, I think. Like maybe she sent you to me somehow." It was a safe way to say it. this feeling that had been growing in her chest like a flower reaching toward impossible light. But Ivy's next words shattered every safe boundary Amelia had built around the truth. "I have dreams about a car," Ivy said, her voice barely audible above the thunder. "There's a man driving, and he's singing. There's a woman with fox eyes like yours, and she's laughing. And there's someone small in the back, but I can never see who." The car starts to spin, and everyone's screaming, and then nothing. Just dark. Amelia's hands began to shake. "Ivy, the dreams feel real. Like memories, but that's impossible, right? Because I would have been too little to remember, and besides." She paused, studying Amelia's face. "Besides, I'm not her. I'm just someone who happens to have the same name." "Right." The question hung in the air between them like a bridge Amelia was afraid to cross. Because what if she was wrong? What if this was just wishful thinking, the desperate fantasy of a grieving mother who wanted her daughter back so badly she was willing to see her in a stranger? But what if she wasn't wrong? "I don't know," Amelia whispered, and it was the most honest thing she'd said in months. That night, after Ivy had fallen asleep, Amelia sat in the dark living room and let herself think the unthinkable. The accident had been chaos. The car rolling, the impact, the fire that followed. She remembered being pulled from the wreckage, remembered screaming for her baby, remembered the paramedics telling her they'd found a car seat, but no child, no body, no remains. Just gone. But what if gone didn't mean dead? What if it meant lost? The thought was too dangerous, too filled with hope that could destroy her if she was wrong. But as she sat there in the darkness, listening to the sound of small feet padding to the bathroom upstairs, she let herself imagine it. What if fate wasn't just a word people use to make sense of senseless things? What if sometimes, just sometimes, love was stronger than logic, than loss, than even death itself? What if her daughter had found her way home? Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the house on Maple Street, two hearts beat in rhythm with a truth neither of them was ready to name. Not yet, but soon, very soon. The manila folder sat on Amelia's kitchen table like a sleeping snake, innocent and deadly all at once. Inside were 43 pages that were supposed to tell Ivy's story, but as Amelia spread them across the wooden surface, she realized they told almost nothing at all. It had taken her 2 weeks to work up the courage to request Ivy's adoption file. 2 weeks of waking up at 3 in the morning with her heart pounding. 2 weeks of watching her daughter, because that's what Ivy was now, legally, officially, and wondering if she was losing her mind. The dreams about the car crash, the identical mannerisms, the way Ivy sometimes called her mama in her sleep, in a voice so young and familiar it made Amelia's chest ache with impossible recognition. "Just get the file," she told herself. "Put this to rest once and for all." But the file raised more questions than it answered. According to the paperwork, Ivy had been found wandering alone near a burned-out rest stop on Highway 47, 3 towns over from where Amelia lived. She was estimated to be around 2 years old, wearing a singed pink dress and clutching a stuffed elephant that had been too damaged by smoke to save. No identification. No family came forward. She'd been placed in emergency care, then shuffled through 3 different foster homes before landing at Willowbrook. The date at the top of the incident report made Amelia's hands shake. October 15, 2013. 2 days after the accident that killed her husband and stole her baby. 2 days. Amelia stared at that date until the numbers blurred together. She checked it again, then again, certain she was misreading. But there it was, typed in official black ink. October 15, 2013. The rest stop was 37 miles from the crash site. 37 miles of winding country roads that a 2-year-old could never have walked alone. But what if she hadn't walked? What if someone had found her in the wreckage, confused and panicked, and taken her to safety? What if that someone had waited for her family to claim her, and when no one came? "No," Amelia whispered to the empty kitchen. "This is crazy. You're seeing connections that aren't there." But even as she said it, she was reaching for her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found Helen's number. Helen Morrison had been Amelia's college roommate, her maid of honor, the friend who'd held her hand through the darkest days after the accident. She was also, conveniently, a private investigator who specialized in cases the police had given up on. "Amelia?" Helen's voice was warm but concerned. It was past 10 on a Thursday night, not exactly social hour. "Everything okay? I need to ask you something." and I need you to not think I'm having a breakdown. A pause. Okay, I'm listening. Amelia closed her eyes and took a breath. I need you to run a DNA test. On who? On Ivy. And on me. The silence stretched so long that Amelia wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Helen spoke, her voice carefully professional. Amelia, honey, your daughter died in that crash. We both know that. The investigators found her car seat. They found a burned car seat. They never found her. Because there was nothing left to find. The fire. What if there was? The words came out in a rush. What if she was thrown clear before the fire started? What if someone found her and couldn't identify her, and she ended up in the system? Amelia. Helen, please. Just listen to me for 1 minute. Amelia pressed her palm against her forehead, trying to organize thoughts that felt like scattered puzzle pieces. Ivy was found 2 days after my accident, 37 miles away. She was the right age. She looks like me. She acts like me. She has the same name as my daughter. She dreams about car crashes. Coincidences. This many coincidences? Really? Amelia's voice cracked. I know how it sounds. I know you think I'm projecting or desperate, or I think you're a mother who lost her child and wants her back, Helen said gently. And I think this little girl you've adopted has stirred up all those feelings. It's natural, Amelia. It doesn't mean. Then prove me wrong. The words hung in the air between them. Run the test, Amelia continued. If I'm wrong, if this is just wishful thinking, then I'll know. I'll stop wondering. I'll stop waking up at 3 in the morning feeling like I'm going crazy. But if I'm right, if you're right, then someone made a mistake 10 years ago that destroyed your life. If you're right, then the system failed in the most spectacular way possible. If you're right, Helen's voice trailed off. If I'm right, then my daughter has been alive this whole time, and I almost missed her. Again, another long silence. When Helen spoke again, her voice was softer, sadder. Okay, but Amelia, you have to prepare yourself for the possibility that. I know. I know the test could say she's not mine. I know this could all be in my head. But I have to know for sure. Can you do it? I can do it. I'll need a sample from both of you. Hair with the follicle or saliva. Something the lab can work with. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Depends on how backed up they are. After they hung up, Amelia sat in her kitchen until dawn, staring at Ivy's adoption file and trying to make sense of the impossible. Upstairs, she could hear the soft sounds of her daughter getting ready for school, water running, drawers opening and closing, the particular rhythm of an 11-year-old morning routine. The next few days passed in a strange bubble of normalcy. Ivy went to school, came home with homework and stories about her friends. They cooked dinner together, watched movies, fell into their comfortable evening routine of reading before bed. But underneath it all, Amelia felt like she was holding her breath. She'd managed to collect what she needed for the test: strands of hair from Ivy's brush, a cotton swab after Ivy had used it to clean her teeth. Small, innocent things that might hold the answer to everything. It was during one of these ordinary evenings, while they were making chocolate chip cookies, that Ivy looked up from the mixing bowl and asked the question that nearly stopped Amelia's heart. Mom, do you think it's possible to forget being someone else? Amelia's hand stilled on the cookie sheet. What do you mean? Like, if something really bad happened to you when you were little, could you forget who you used to be? Could your brain just start over? The kitchen felt suddenly too small, too warm. Why do you ask? Ivy shrugged, but there was something careful in her expression. Sometimes I feel like I used to know things that I don't know anymore. Like there's this person inside me who remembers stuff, but I can't reach her. What kind of stuff? Songs. Someone used to sing to me, but I can't remember the words. And there was a place, a room with dancing elephants on the ceiling. But that's silly, right? Who has elephants on their ceiling? The wooden spoon slipped from Amelia's fingers and clattered to the floor. Mom, are you okay? Amelia knelt to pick up the spoon, using the moment to steady herself. The nursery upstairs had a mobile of dancing elephants. Pink elephants that twirled slowly in circles above the crib her baby daughter had never slept in. I'm fine, she managed. Just clumsy. But that night, after Ivy had gone to bed, Amelia climbed the stairs to the nursery and stood in the doorway, staring at those dancing elephants. In 10 years, she'd never mentioned them to anyone. She'd barely looked at them herself. They hurt too much. How could Ivy know about them unless she'd seen them before? Unless she'd lain in that crib as a baby, watching them spin in the afternoon light. forming memories too deep and old for her conscious mind to reach. Amelia pressed her back against the doorframe and let herself imagine it. Ivy as a baby, in this room, in this house. Ivy taking her first steps down these same hallways. Ivy calling her Mama, not because she'd learned the word from someone else, but because she'd never forgotten it. The thought was too big, too overwhelming, too fragile to hold on to. But for the first time in 10 years, Amelia let herself hope. Really, truly hope. Somewhere in the city, Helen was fast-tracking a DNA test that would either shatter that hope forever or confirm the impossible. Either way, everything was about to change. 3 weeks. That's how long hope could stretch before it started to feel like torture. 3 weeks of watching Ivy brush her teeth and wondering if those were the same teeth that had bitten Amelia's finger when she was teething. 3 weeks of hearing her laugh and trying to remember if her baby's laugh had sounded the same. 3 weeks of ordinary moments that felt anything but ordinary. The waiting was killing her. But in those 3 weeks, something beautiful was happening alongside the agony. Ivy was finally, truly settling in. The careful politeness was melting away, replaced by something real and warm and wonderfully complicated. It started with small rebellions. Ivy forgot to make her bed one morning, then looked at Amelia with a mix of defiance and fear, as if testing what would happen when she wasn't perfect. "The world won't end if your bed isn't made," Amelia said mildly, and watched Ivy's shoulders relax. Then came the bigger tests. Ivy complained about broccoli at dinner and pushed it around her plate with dramatic disgust. She argued about bedtime, claiming she was practically 12 and shouldn't have to go to sleep at 9:30. She left her art supplies scattered across the dining room table and forgot to put her dirty clothes in the hamper. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful, messy, exhausting normal kid stuff. "You're not going to send me back, are you?" Ivy asked one evening after a particularly spectacular argument about homework. She was curled up on the couch next to Amelia, her anger spent, looking suddenly young and vulnerable. "Never," Amelia said without hesitation. "You're stuck with me now, kiddo, for better or worse. Even if I'm difficult, especially if you're difficult. Easy kids are boring." Ivy giggled, a sound so pure and uninhibited that Amelia had to blink back tears. They developed new traditions. Sunday morning pancakes evolved into elaborate breakfast productions, with Ivy insisting on making faces in the batter using chocolate chips and blueberries. Thursday nights became weird dinner night, where they experimented with strange food combinations that usually ended in laughter and emergency trips to get pizza. But it was the quiet moments that undid Amelia completely. Like the evening she found Ivy in the garden, talking softly to the struggling tomato plants while she watered them. "Come on, little guys," Ivy was saying, her voice gentle and encouraging. "I know it's hard to grow, but you can do it. Look, I brought you some nice water and some plant food. Mom says you need both to be strong." Amelia stood in the doorway, watching her daughter, and she was thinking of Ivy as her daughter now, regardless of what the DNA test might say. Nurture the plants with the same patient tenderness Amelia remembered using with her own garden years ago. "They're looking better," Amelia said, stepping outside. Ivy looked up, dirt smudged on her cheek. "I think they were just lonely. Sometimes things don't grow because nobody's paying attention to them." The wisdom in those words hit Amelia like a physical blow. How many years had she spent not growing, not thriving, because she'd convinced herself that nobody was paying attention, that she didn't deserve to be cared for after failing to protect the people she loved most? "You're probably right," she said softly. That night, Ivy asked if she could sleep in Amelia's room. "I'm not scared or anything," she said quickly. It gets quiet at night. Too quiet. And sometimes the quiet feels bigger than me." Amelia understood that feeling completely. "Of course you can. We can have a sleepover." They dragged Ivy's mattress into Amelia's bedroom and set up a nest of blankets and pillows on the floor. As they settled in for the night, Ivy's voice came through the darkness, small and wondering. "Mom, yeah. Do you ever feel like you're remembering something that hasn't happened yet?" Amelia's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "Like, sometimes when we're doing stuff together, it feels familiar. Not like I've done it before, but like I always knew I would do it. Like it was always supposed to happen." "Like what?" "Like making pancakes with you. Like sitting in the garden. Like calling you Mom." Ivy was quiet for a moment. "Is that weird?" Amelia closed her eyes, fighting back tears that wanted to come. "No, sweetheart. It's not weird at all. Sometimes I think maybe we knew each other before, in another life or something. Do you believe in that stuff? The question hung in the darkness between them, loaded with possibilities neither of them was ready to voice. I believe in connection, Amelia said carefully. I believe some people are meant to find each other. Yeah, Ivy whispered. Me too. The next morning, Amelia woke to find Ivy curled up next to her in the big bed, having migrated from her mattress sometime during the night. She was sleeping peacefully, one arm flung across Amelia's waist, her face soft and unguarded in the morning light. For a moment, time collapsed. Amelia could almost imagine this was how it was supposed to be, how it would have been if that rainy night 10 years ago had ended differently. She could picture mornings like this stretching back through the years, lazy Saturday wake-ups and whispered conversations, and the particular sweetness of a child who chose to sleep close to you. But then Ivy stirred, and the moment became present tense again. Real but fragile, beautiful but uncertain. "Morning, Mom," Ivy mumbled into the pillow. "Morning, baby." The endearment slipped out before Amelia could stop it, but Ivy didn't seem to mind. If anything, she snuggled closer. Later that week, they were at the grocery store when it happened. Ivy had wandered off to look at the magazine rack while Amelia compared prices on pasta sauce, and suddenly she heard a voice that made her blood run cold. "Ivy? Ivy, is that you?" Amelia turned to see a middle-aged woman in a store uniform approaching Ivy with a look of shocked recognition. Ivy stepped back, her face going pale. "I'm sorry," the woman continued, "but you look so much like a little girl I used to know. She went missing years ago, after a terrible car accident. The whole town was looking for her. Could you be?" "No," Ivy said quickly, but her voice was shaking. "I'm not missing. I'm with my mom." She looked around frantically until she spotted Amelia, then ran to her side and grabbed her hand. "This is my mom," she said, but there was something desperate in her voice. The woman looked between them, confusion clear on her face. "I'm so sorry. It's just, the resemblance is remarkable. There was this little girl, about 10 years ago. She would be about your age now. Her mother was in a terrible accident on Highway 12, and the baby was never found. Everyone assumed." She trailed off, shaking her head. "But of course, that's impossible. I'm sorry for bothering you." As the woman walked away, Ivy's grip on Amelia's hand tightened. "Mom," she whispered, "why do I feel like I know her?" Amelia's heart was pounding so hard she could barely speak. Highway 12. That was where it had happened. Where her husband had died and her world had ended and her baby had disappeared into the night. "I don't know, sweetheart," she managed. Sometimes faces just seem familiar. But as they finished their shopping and drove home in unusual silence, Amelia could feel the walls closing in. The coincidences were piling up like stones, building towards something that would either set them free or bury them completely. That night, after Ivy had gone to bed, Amelia's phone rang. Helen's name appeared on the screen, and Amelia's hands began to shake. "The results are in," Helen said without preamble. "Are you sitting down?" Amelia sank into a kitchen chair, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Just tell me." "Amelia," Helen's voice was thick with emotion. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've never had to make a call like this one." "Helen, please. She's yours. Ivy is your daughter. 99.9% certainty. There's no doubt." The phone slipped from Amelia's fingers and clattered to the floor. Somewhere far away, she could hear Helen calling her name, but the sound was drowned out by the rushing in her ears. Her daughter, her baby, alive, upstairs, safe, home. The room spun around her as 10 years of grief and guilt and desperate love crashed together in her chest. She pressed her hands to her mouth to keep the sobs from waking Ivy, but they came anyway, great, gasping cries that tore through her like birth pains. Her daughter was alive, had been alive this whole time, had been lost and alone and shuffled through the system while Amelia mourned her death. The injustice of it was staggering. The miracle of it was even more so. Upstairs, she could hear movement. Ivy getting up to use the bathroom, the soft pad of bare feet on hardwood floors. In a few minutes, she would have to go up there and look into those amber eyes and figure out how to tell an 11-year-old girl that everything she thought she knew about her life was about to change. But first, she had to figure out how to tell herself. Her daughter was home. Finally, impossibly, miraculously home. The storm came out of nowhere, the way October storms do. One minute the sky was clear, The next it was split by lightning that made the whole house shudder. Amelia sat at her kitchen table, Helen's words still echoing in her ears like thunder that wouldn't fade. She's yours. Ivy is your daughter. 3 days. That's how long she'd been carrying this truth around like a live wire in her chest, not knowing how to touch it without being destroyed. 3 days of making breakfast and helping with homework and tucking Ivy into bed, all while her heart screamed the impossible reality. This is my baby. This is my daughter who I buried in my dreams every night for 10 years. But how do you tell a child that her entire life has been built on a mistake? How do you say everything you thought you knew about yourself is wrong, without shattering something that can't be fixed? Another crack of thunder shook the windows, and Amelia heard footsteps on the stairs. Mom. Ivy appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair tousled from sleep, wearing the oversized t-shirt she'd claimed as pajamas. The power went out upstairs. It's okay, sweetheart. Just the storm. Amelia's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Too high. Too careful. Come sit with me. I've got candles. Ivy padded across the kitchen and settled into the chair across from her, amber eyes reflecting the flickering flames. In the soft light, with her guard down and her face young with sleep, she looked exactly like the baby Amelia remembered. The same curve to her cheek, the same way she tilted her head when she was thinking. You look sad, Ivy said, studying Amelia's face with that uncanny intuition she'd always had. Not sad, just thinking. About what? The question hung in the air between them like a bridge Amelia was terrified to cross. She'd practiced this conversation 100 times in her head, but now, faced with those trusting eyes, every careful word disappeared. Ivy, she began, then stopped. Started again. Do you remember what I told you about my daughter? The one who died in the accident. Ivy nodded, suddenly very still. What if I told you that? What if she didn't die? What if she was hurt and lost, and the people who found her couldn't figure out who she belonged to? What do you mean? Amelia's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together on the table. The DNA test came back. The one Helen ran for us. DNA test. Ivy's voice was small, confused. What DNA test? The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other like stones down a hill. I had to know. All the coincidences, all the ways you reminded me of her, of myself. I had to know if it was possible. If you could be. Could be what? Amelia closed her eyes, took a breath that felt like drowning, and spoke the truth that was going to change everything. You're her, Ivy. You're my daughter. My baby who I thought I lost 10 years ago. You didn't die in that accident. You were thrown clear, and someone found you, and you ended up in the system because nobody knew who you were. But you're mine. You've always been mine. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of rain against windows and the soft hiss of candle flames. When Ivy finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. That's not possible. The DNA doesn't lie, sweetheart. You're my biological daughter. The daughter I've been grieving for 10 years. Ivy stared at her, eyes wide and unblinking. But I would remember. If I had a different life, if I had you before, I would remember. You were so little, just barely 2 years old. And you went through something terrible. Sometimes our minds protect us from things that are too big to understand. No. Ivy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. No, that's crazy. You're not. I'm not. She pressed her hands to her head, as if trying to hold her thoughts in place. My life is my life. I know who I am. Ivy, stop calling me that. The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. If what you're saying is true, then that's not even my real name, is it? That's just what they called me because they didn't know what else to call me. The pain in her voice hit Amelia like a physical blow. No, baby, no. Ivy is your real name. It's the name your father and I gave you when you were born. It's always been your name. My father. Ivy's voice cracked. I had a father? You had a father who loved you more than anything in the world, who sang to you every night before bed and made funny faces to make you laugh, and Amelia's voice broke, and who died trying to keep you safe. Ivy sank back into her chair as if her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. If you're my mother, if I lived here before, then why don't I remember? Why doesn't any of it feel familiar? But it does, doesn't it? Amelia said gently. The dancing elephants you told me about? They're upstairs, in what used to be your nursery. The songs you can't quite remember? Your father used to sing them to you. The way you organize things, the way you talk to plants, the way you call me mama in your sleep. Those aren't coincidences, sweetheart. They're memories trying to find their way back. Ivy was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. But if I'm your daughter, if I was here all along, then why didn't you find me? Why did you let me grow up thinking I was nobody's? The question tore through Amelia's chest like a blade. Because I thought you were dead. They told me you were dead. They found your car seat, burned and empty, and they said, she couldn't finish. I've been visiting your grave for 10 years, Ivy. I brought you flowers every birthday and cried myself to sleep every night because I couldn't save you. I would have moved heaven and earth to find you if I'd known you were alive. You have a grave? For me, a headstone, with your name and a little lamb carved on it. I used to sit there and read you stories, the same way I read to you now. Ivy covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. This is too much. This is too big. I can't. I don't know how to be someone I don't remember being. Amelia wanted nothing more than to go to her, to wrap her arms around her and make it all better the way mothers are supposed to do. But she stayed in her chair, giving Ivy space to process something that was breaking both their hearts. You don't have to be anyone but exactly who you are, she said softly. You're still Ivy. You're still the girl who talks to plants and makes faces in pancake batter and argues about bedtime. None of that changes. But everything changes. Ivy looked up, her face streaked with tears. Everything I thought I knew about myself is wrong. I'm not some random kid who nobody wanted. I'm your kid who got lost. I'm not an orphan. I have a family. Had a family. I don't know. You have a family, Amelia said firmly. You have me. You've always had me, even when we couldn't find each other. And my father? My real father. Amelia's throat closed up. His name was David. He had dark hair like yours and the most beautiful laugh. He worked with computers, but he wanted to be a musician. He played guitar and wrote songs for you. Silly songs about dinosaurs and ice cream and how much he loved his little girl. What happened to him? In the accident. He died on impact. He never knew you survived. Amelia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But he would be so proud of who you've become. So proud and so happy that you found your way back to me. Ivy was quiet for a long time, staring at the candle flames as if they might hold answers. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and lost. I used to dream about a man singing. I could never see his face, but I knew he loved me. Was that him? Probably. Memory works in mysterious ways, especially when we're trying to protect ourselves from pain. And the lady with fox eyes? In my dreams. That was me. That was always me. Ivy looked up then, studying Amelia's face in the candlelight. You do have fox eyes. I noticed that the first day I met you. I thought it was weird how much they looked like mine. Because they are like yours. Because you're my daughter. The words hung in the air between them, no longer a question but a fact. A truth that was terrible and wonderful and completely overwhelming. So what happens now? Ivy whispered. Amelia reached across the table, slowly, carefully, and took her daughter's hand. Now we figure it out together. We talk about it. We cry about it. We get angry about it if we need to. We learn how to be a family that was broken and lost, and somehow found each other again. Are you sure? Ivy's voice was shaking. Are you sure you want me? Not just because I'm her, because I'm your biological daughter, but because I'm me? The me I am now. Amelia squeezed her hand, feeling the small fingers that had once wrapped around hers as a baby, that had been reaching for her across 10 years of darkness. I wanted you before I knew who you were, she said. I chose you, remember? I fell in love with exactly who you are, stubborn and creative and brave and beautiful. Finding out you're my biological daughter doesn't change that love. It just explains it. Ivy nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Can I? Can I see the nursery? With the dancing elephants? Of course. They climbed the stairs together, carrying candles that threw dancing shadows on the walls. Amelia pushed open the door she hadn't entered in months, and they stepped into a room that had been waiting 10 years for this moment. Ivy stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, taking in the pink walls and the crib and the mobile of dancing elephants that hung perfectly still in the candlelight. I remember, she whispered. Not everything, but I remember lying here and watching them spin. I remember feeling safe. You were safe. You were so loved. Ivy reached up and gave the mobile a gentle push. The elephants began to dance, casting moving shadows on the walls, And for a moment, time collapsed. Past and present merged into something that felt like coming home. Mom. Ivy's voice was soft, uncertain. Yeah, baby. I'm scared. Me too. But I'm also happy. Is that weird? Amelia smiled through her tears. No, sweetheart. It's not weird at all. It's exactly how love is supposed to feel. Scary and wonderful and impossible and absolutely right. Outside, the storm was beginning to pass, but inside the nursery, mother and daughter stood together in the candlelight, watching elephants dance and learning how to be a family all over again. 3 months later, on a crisp January morning, Amelia and Ivy stood at the edge of a field that had once been twisted metal and broken dreams. The crash site looked nothing like Amelia remembered from that terrible night. The road had been repaved, guardrails installed, and what had once been a scene of devastation was now just a curve in a country highway bordered by winter grass and sleeping trees. It's smaller than I thought it would be, Ivy said, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Tragedy always looks smaller in daylight, Amelia replied, pulling her coat tighter. But the love that survives it, that's what grows. They'd talked about making this trip for weeks. Ivy had been curious about the place where her story began, not the orphanage or the foster homes, but the moment when her life split in two. The moment she became lost so she could eventually be found. In her hands, Ivy carried a small wooden heart she'd carved in art class. On one side, she'd written Dad in careful letters. On the other, thank you for keeping me safe. Tell me about him again, she said as they walked toward the spot where Amelia's memories ended and Ivy's blank space began. He had your stubborn streak, Amelia smiled, and your way of humming when you're concentrating. He used to say you got that from him, but I think you both got it from some deeper place where music lives. What else? He cried when you were born. Happy tears. He held you for hours and kept saying, I can't believe she's ours. I can't believe we get to keep her. Amelia's voice caught. Turns out he was right to worry about that. They'd been working through the trauma together, both of them. Ivy with a counselor who specialized in recovered memory and attachment. Amelia with a therapist who helped her navigate the impossible guilt of having her prayers answered in the cruelest possible way. It's not your fault, Dr. Martinez had told her again and again. The system failed. Multiple people failed. You mourned a living child because you were told she was dead. That's not your failure. That's a tragedy of errors that somehow led to a miracle. But forgiveness, Amelia was learning, was a daily choice. Some days were easier than others. Here, she said, stopping at a place that felt right, though she couldn't be sure it was exact. I think this is where it happened. Ivy knelt in the brown grass and placed her wooden heart carefully on the ground. Hi, Dad, she said softly. I know you can't hear me, but Mom says you might be listening anyway. I wanted to say thank you for singing to me and for loving me and for, she paused, thinking, for throwing me far enough away that I could live. Amelia knelt beside her, placing a small bouquet of daisies, David's favorite flower, next to the wooden heart. I brought her home, she whispered. Finally, she's beautiful and fierce and everything you hoped she'd be. And she knows how much you loved her. They stayed there for a while, mother and daughter, remembering and honoring the man who'd given his life to save theirs. When they finally stood to leave, Ivy slipped her hand into Amelia's. Mom, yeah. Do you think he knows? About us finding each other. Amelia looked up at the pale winter sky, thinking about the impossible series of coincidences that had brought them to this moment. The volunteer reading that had led her to Willowbrook. The undeniable pull she'd felt toward one particular child. The way Ivy had looked at her that first day, as if she'd been waiting. Yeah, she said. I think he knows. The drive home was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until they were pulling into their driveway that Ivy spoke again. I've been thinking about what Dr. Rodriguez said, about how sometimes our souls recognize each other even when our minds don't. What about it? I think that's what happened with us. I think my soul never forgot who you were, even when my brain couldn't remember. That's why everything felt so right from the beginning. That's why I called you Mama in my sleep before I even knew what that meant. Amelia parked the car, but didn't turn off the engine right away. You really believe that? Don't you? It was a fair question. In the past few months, Amelia had been forced to reconsider everything she thought she knew about fate, about loss, about the possibility that love could survive even death. I believe in second chances, she said finally. I believe in love that refuses to give up. And I believe that some families are stronger than anything that tries to break them apart. Even time, even time. That evening, as they followed their familiar routine of homework and dinner and stories before bed, everything felt both completely normal and utterly miraculous. This was their life now, not the life Amelia had lost 10 years ago, and not the life Ivy had lived without knowing who she really was, but something new. Something built on truth and choice and the stubborn refusal to let tragedy have the last word. Mom, Ivy called from her bedroom as Amelia was turning out the hall light. What is it, sweetheart? I love you. Not just because you're my biological mother, but because you chose me, even when you thought I was someone else. Amelia leaned against the doorframe, her heart too full for words. I love you too, baby. All of you. Who you were, who you are, and who you're still becoming. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Always. Amelia settled into the chair beside Ivy's bed, the same chair she'd imagined sitting in 10 years ago when she decorated a nursery for a baby who never came home. Now that baby was 11 years old, safe and loved and finally, impossibly, where she belonged. As Ivy's breathing deepened and sleep claimed her, Amelia whispered the words she'd said every night for a decade, but which finally, miraculously, could be heard by the child they were meant for. Sweet dreams, my darling girl. Mama loves you. Daddy loves you. And nothing, not time, not distance, not even death, will ever change that. Outside, the winter wind whispered through the trees, carrying prayers answered and promises kept. And inside the house on Maple Street, a family that had been broken by tragedy and scattered by chance was whole again, bound together by love that had survived everything life could throw at it. In the morning, there would be pancakes and arguments about homework and all the beautiful, ordinary chaos of a normal family. But tonight, there was just peace. Just a mother and daughter who had found their way back to each other across 10 years of darkness. Just love, proving once again that it was stronger than anything else in the world.